You are the alchemist of your life. The question was never, why do I copy others? But the question was always, what do I do with it once I know this is what I do? The goal is to move from being a mirror to being a generator. Someone who brings their own frequency into the room rather than simply amplifying everyone else's. But how do you trust a self that you have never been properly introduced to? The answer lives nowhere else but inside you. In the last video, I said that the real question to ask is, are you awake enough to recognize the path you are already on? Because before you can answer this question honestly, you need to look at something most of us have spent a lifetime, maybe, trying to forget. We have been imitating each other since the day we were born. And the moment we caught ourselves doing it, most of us did the same one thing. We felt ashamed. We denied it, and we buried it so deeply, so completely, that we actually believed our own denial. I did that too. I remember I was about 7 years old, like first or second grade, and we were playing ball in a schoolyard. And I got angry at a girl for some reason. And in a low whisper, I called her a curse word. A curse word that I had never used before, which didn't come from my family, from my home, like my vocabulary. I don't even know where I picked it up from. It came out in that moment as a relief. As if like labeling her with that curse word and expressing it would bring me relief. But it didn't feel like relief. And also, I was sure no one heard me, so it was just my burden to carry. And I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like that I wanted to feel relief by saying that to her, but I didn't feel relief. So I didn't like that. And since I didn't like it, I instantly forgot it. I forgot the incident. And surprisingly for me though, she heard me, even if I was sure nobody heard me. And she told the teacher. And the teacher confronted me in front of the entire class. And that was an exposure which was my biggest nightmare. So I denied it. In that moment, I had forgotten it completely. So that's why I was so confident in denying this accusation. And I was very convincing, because since I was the best pupil in the class and I had had a perfect behavior and a good reputation with no previous similar incidents, not even close actually, with good parents and upbringing, the adults believed me, not her. It took me decades to bring this incident to the surface from the depth of my buried memories, and to then process and understand what had happened. Because I didn't just deny this to them so that I could be like, get away with it or get rid of a feeling I didn't like to have in the first place. I denied it to myself. This incident triggered one of the most stable foundations in my belief system, based on a quiet, invisible wound, which was people make up stories about me. I'm just trying to be good and accommodate, and they accuse me wrongly about things I would not do. And it was only years later, deep in spiritual awareness work, that this memory surfaced. And I was shocked. Not because I had called someone a curse word, but because I had erased it so thoroughly and almost instantly from my own record back then. Like, I don't think it took more than a minute before it was gone. So they didn't caught me off guard when they questioned me, because I was sure it didn't happen. And in the meantime, I built an entire story about being wrongly accused on top of a lie that I had convinced myself that was true. And I only remember this because of my studies on mimetism, the act of copying others. Imitation. In tantric tradition, this behavior lives in the territory of the sacral chakra, the name of which is translated more like one's own dwelling place. The exquisite irony is that this is precisely where we mostly lose ourselves. This is the center that governs our emotional life, our social world, our sense of belonging. And when it is not yet mature, balanced, we simply become mirrors, absorbing the mood of the room, catching other people's anxiety like a cold, confusing what the group wants with what we want. Because at this level, the boundary between the self and the others is genuinely fluid. And this is not pathology, this is developmental. This is where we first learn to navigate the difference between my desires and your desires. The navigation takes time, an experience, and for many of us, a conscious reckoning that we were never invited to have. The imbalance shows up as drama addiction, compulsive comparison, the quiet erosion of personal boundaries until you no longer know what you actually feel or want, and you only look at what the others want, what the others actually require from you to be, say, or do so that you are belonging. The path back is not suppression, it is sublimation, which means to learn to work with those unconscious impressions rather than to be run by them. The goal is to move from being a mirror to being a generator, someone who brings their own frequency into the room rather than simply amplifying everyone else's. Neuroscience confirms what the tradition knew already, intuitively. We have mirror neurons, cells that fire identically whether you perform an action or you simply watch someone else perform it. You don't choose to mirror someone. Your nervous system does it before you even realize it, before your conscious mind arrives. And it is the species' original learning software. And it goes even deeper than behavior. There is a theory proposing that we don't just copy actions or behaviors, we copy wants. We desire what others desire, not because we have evaluated it independently, but because someone we admire desires it or has it. We see it, we want it. Which means much of what you think you want may be the echo of someone else's desire. Years into my spiritual studies, deep inside a spiritually oriented organization I had given myself completely to, someone pointed something out to me. You move like her, they said. You gesture like her. You use her words, not yours. I was copying my teacher. Not consciously, not as flattery. My body had simply absorbed her gestures, her rhythms, her vocabulary, her way of speaking, her way of moving. And I used to walk into the room in the way she walked into the room. I moved my hands the way she moved hers. I was laughing like she was laughing. I used the words that she used, not the ones I grew up with, not the ones I reached for naturally with my close friends. And I call that love. And what makes this ironic? This is precisely what our culture prescribes. Fake it till make it. As if performing the self you wish you were will somehow summon the real one. When I realized this, I felt that familiar heat again. Anger. The same as back in schoolyard. Because the implication felt devastating. I felt I have no self. I am just a reflection of whoever I admire. And here is the cruel paradox. We are surrounded by advice to be ourselves, to follow our own path, to trust our intuition, to be responsible for our own life, which is true. But how do you trust a self that you have never been properly introduced to? There is something inside us that watches, that monitors, that knows. But we only catch it in glimpses. We get like tiny flashes, if at all, which is why we live in such a chronic doubt, looking for constant validation in the outside. Or did I actually feel that? Did I do that? Was it me saying that? Society will not answer these questions for us. And yet, the answer lives nowhere else but inside you. For me, it would take a trip to Japan to make a difference, to wake up. At a dolphin facility in Okinawa, the trainer instructed me how to interact with the dolphins. She said simply, dolphins are like children. They learn by imitating you. How can a dolphin imitate me? They have fins and like a tail. However, playing with them, I realized what she meant. And that experience for me was the moment where something clicked inside. Something shifted actually instantly within me, as if a lid was removed. Because in the moment I looked at this beautiful, intelligent, playful, sovereign creature, the dolphin, I understood that it was playing along. It was not diminished by copying, by imitating. It was just having fun somehow. Actually, it was a mechanism for it to learn how to communicate with me. It was not ashamed by its mirror neurons. And I realized I'm just a human being. I'm not broken. I'm not fake. I'm not a monkey with no original thought. I'm not just like copy-pasting everything. There's something else I can do with this mechanism. I realized I'm a human being who is doing exactly what human beings are biologically, evolutionary, spiritually designed to do. The question was never, why do I copy others? But the question was always, what do I do with it once I know this is what I do? And the answer that I found was, I play, I learn, I override. There is an important distinction to name here. Mimicry, mimetism, social mimetism, operates below thought. It is somatic, automatic, pre-conscious. The body does that. The nervous system does that. Before the consciousness takes over and has a say. However, we have such a thing as social conformity, which operates one level up. It is behavioral, ideological. It is the adaptation of what you do and what you believe to match the norms of the group around you. The conformity moves along a spectrum of consciousness. At the deepest level, you don't even know you have changed. Studies have showed that people would doubt their own clear perception of reality when surrounded by a group that confidently states the opposite, and they wouldn't even identify the group as the cause. This is how invisible unconscious conformity is. You simply find yourself different, and you think it was always this way. One step up, the low-grade unease. The subtle sense that something is off, that you are performing rather than living, but you don't examine it. You suppress it. And you keep moving. And then strategic conformity would be the next level. You know you are doing this. You are adapting deliberately. For safety, for belonging, for survival. And this is conscious but not yet free. And finally, the threshold, what I call sovereign alignment. You examine the norm, you sit with it, you choose it. Freely, fully, knowingly. You inhabit it because it reflects something genuinely yours. That is not conformity anymore. That is chosen membership. The shift between all these layers is not willpower. It is not discipline. It is simply the willingness to look. It is discernment. And here's what I know now that I did not know in my 20s nor my 30s. Imitation was never the problem. The unconsciousness around it was. Because you do not randomly copy everything. You copy what magnetizes you. And what magnetizes you is a precise and personal data about where your soul is hungry, what your nature is reaching toward, and what you have not yet claimed as yours. The anger I felt every time I caught myself imitating others, it was protecting something sacred, actually. It was telling me authenticity matters to you profoundly. And this is not nothing, actually, this is the whole point. My teenage fury was a clumsy, unconscious yearning for my own sovereignty. I find this fundamental. As children, we copy unconsciously. It is not that much of a choice. The mechanism is just running us from deep within. However, as sovereign adults, we copy because we choose to, consciously, selectively, as a living research instrument. Like, you see something and then, oh, let me try this on. Let me feel what this feels like. Let me see what this reveals. What does this points me towards? And as children, it's like we are living inside a mirror. But as sovereign adults, we stand before it and we decide. I believe true maturity is the graduation from unconscious imitation to conscious apprenticeship to life itself. You're still imitating, copying, but now you know it. You don't just paste it forward. Now you choose what to copy and why you do that and what to do with what you learn along the way. And most importantly, you know what you want is the inner state of the one you follow or admire because they inspire you. You don't want what they have. You want something you see in them. You want to become like them. This version of them that you see in them is already the version inside you wanting to come to life. Basically, you just resonate at the same frequency with them and they just make you see it within yourself. And looking at things like this removes envy and jealousy. And the sooner you realize that, the faster you can become that. Because this is not a monkey copying others anymore. This is an alchemist. You are the alchemist of your life. Sometimes we think we can solve this by running away. In my case, for example, moving to another country and doing voluntary work in a spiritual organization for the greater good didn't really solve the problem. I learned that the hard way 10 years later, after discovering that no spiritual organization, no acclaimed spiritual path, no spiritual teacher, not even a spiritual master could do for me what only I could do for myself. And I cannot even blame myself for looking in the outside. I think this planet is not a planet of saints. I believe it is the planet we come to in order to wake up. The spiritual masters and teachers who have inhabited this planet and left, leaving behind their knowledge and their systems and their methods. I think they were here only to learn their own lessons and complete something and then move on and explore other dimensions of this vast universe. And I'm grateful they left us what they did. We need user manuals. But also, the user manual is not the destination. At some point, you need to stop copy-pasting anything. And you need to start applying into your own life and your own body, in your own mind, in your own soul. And make it uniquely yours. Take what you resonate with and look where that was pointing inside you, and then work with it in your own practice, in your own body, in your own life, until it's no longer something you borrowed, but it's something you metabolize, you assimilate. And this is not rebellion. The rebellion is still reacting, or it's still defined by what it pushes against. But what I'm talking about is something much, much deeper and more quiet. Something more inevitable. It is like outgrowing the cradle. Like a child, a baby, doesn't rebel against the cradle. It simply grows until the cradle can no longer contain it. And then it stands up and walks and follows his or her own path. And this is what I believe a spiritual path is. Not a war against the system that shaped you, but an organic, cellular, unhurried becoming until you are too large for the inherited shape. And your own form, your own walk, your own voice becomes the only truth that you needed. So here is what I want to leave you with. Think of something you desire right now, something that you are reaching toward in your life, in your relationships, in your spiritual practice, and ask with genuine curiosity, is this for me? Or is this a mirror of what someone I admire once wanted for me? Not to discard it, not to shame yourself if the answer is both, but to know, to bring the light of consciousness to it, and to stand before the mirror as a sovereign being rather than being swallowed by it. Cherish the day you can look at your own imitation skills with curiosity instead of contempt. This is the day that you start truly living your life. That is where the real life begins.